I was lied to growing up. I was painted this picture of Israel as this perfect place. And then when I found out it wasn't, I've decided to become anti-Israel.
If you want young people to represent Israel, they have to know what Israel represents.
We have to reckon with the truth. We have to reckon with history.
If that moment didn't happen, there would be no Israel.
Welcome back to our summer edition of Being Jewish with Jonah Platt, 30 Minute Mensches. Same vibe, same tribe, shorter episodes. My guest today is a major voice in digital Jewish education. Literally. He's the host of podcasts Unpacking Israeli History and Wondering Jews with Michal Biton, executive VP of OpenDor Media, and an educator of educators. He's modern Orthodox, he loves pizza, and he was principal of a school in LA that once expelled one of my best friends. Please welcome Noam Weissman.
What an intro. What an intro.
You know, we like to have fun here, Noam. It's great to have you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start a little bit back in time. You wrote a doctoral dissertation, and your topic was approaching Israel education. So I think it makes a lot of sense to start there, given what you've been doing since. So at that time, what were the conclusions you drew about how we need to begin approaching Israel education, which you've now gone and done in all of the years since?
Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with this topic, and my chair at USC said to me when I was writing my dissertation, she said, Noam, what is the number one problem in the Jewish educational world? Because at this point in time, I was teaching Talmud, I was teaching rabbinics, I was teaching the Hebrew Bible, Tanakh, I was teaching Jewish philosophy. And I said, well, the biggest issue is how Israel's taught. That was the biggest issue. So she's like, Noam, then you have your topic. You have your topic done. And her name is Kim Harabayashi. She's not Jewish. And she was just like, you gotta really explore this issue. So my conclusion there was that young people don't want to feel lied to anymore. Young people want to see the wide breadth of perspectives out there. That young people are very that it is incredibly possible to be both passionate and compassionate at the same time. There's three different ways to talk about Israel that a lot of people have spoken about, whether it's Israel studies, and the goal of Israel studies is to analyze an issue. Israel advocacy is to defend or train, and Israel education is to cultivate an identity. And what I saw when talking about Israel, for all of these teachers, for all of these educators across the spectrum, they were talking about Israel in an advocacy-oriented way and not an educational-oriented way. And what that meant is that advocacy is a one-sided, here's the truth, now let me bring you to the truth, and education is much more about cultivation of your identity within that broader topic. So that's what I focused on in the last 7 years has been, history.
So it sounds like what you're saying is what I've heard from a lot of people who have sort of ended up becoming more anti-Israel Jews from like the younger crowd is, I was lied to growing up. I was painted this picture of Israel as this perfect place. And then when I found out it wasn't, I've decided to become anti-Israel. Which, I think that argument is silly, but that's a whole different thing. But I mean, it seems like that's sort of the core issue. I'm curious as to sort of like why that's a modern phenomenon. Like, why are we just now, and I don't even mean in Israel studies, but like generally in education, like suddenly demanding accuracy with the way that we're taught things in a way that I guess we didn't care so much about before.
Yeah, I mean, like, I want to say, this is going to maybe provocative for your audience, be provocative for mine. I don't think that they're so wrong, those people who argued about the way they were taught about Israel. I think that it'd be wrong to say that in the last 5 to 7 years, though. I think that very few schools are doing bad Israel education now. But I think that for a long time they were. They really were not teaching about the troubles and the challenges of the Palestinians in the West Bank or in Gaza. They were not really teaching about the challenging moments of Israeli history. And they were just kind of assuming that young Jewish people would be on Team Israel without actually engaging and doing the serious work of learning about the story in a very real way. So I disagree with the conclusions of those people, those young people, that Israel is this pariah, horrible state. I don't think that that's true at all.
Yeah.
But I think that the educator world has to do some reckoning and think really about how to teach about Israel differently.
For me, when I was, I went to day school, I went to Jewish summer camp, all that. To me, the issue wasn't like necessarily a one-sided Israel education. It was like a no Israel education. I mean, I learned songs, I learned Golda Meir, I learned Kahol Velavan.
Nice.
I didn't learn that Israel was a parliamentary democracy until I was like in my 30s. I mean,
Yes. Yes.
just nothing, zero, bubkiss, like no sociology, no history, zero.
There's a lot going on here. Okay, so let's go through them. One is Israel wasn't core to a Jewish educational experience. You're right. The way Israel was taught, beyond it just having an advocacy orientation, it also was relegated to Israel Independence Day or to, you know what I'm saying? Or like Israel Memorial Day or the hallways or like celebrating something that was like the wars. People love teaching about the wars.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been trying to do, and what a lot of people in the field are trying to do in unpacking Israeli history, is to, go through different moments of Israeli history, like the Altalena, or understanding German reparations, or the Black Panthers, and the story of the Sephardic and Mizrahi integration into Israeli society, understanding why Israel does not have a constitution, understanding what's written in the Israel's Declaration of Independence. Like, there's a lot to learn about the story of Israel. And my whole bit became, if you want young people to represent Israel, they have to know what Israel represents, right? Like,
I love that.
that became like the way I think about the world. And what happened, I think, and you were talking about not just Israel, but the people. Let's talk about how American history is taught.
Right.
There are two different ways to talk about American history, right? One way to teach about American history is to say, America is perfect. George Washington never cut down that cherry tree, whatever that story
Right.
is. He might not have
Right.
gotten there, right? You go back to the founding fathers, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so proud to be an American. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that's one vision. And the other is to say, no, 1619. Actually, America was born in sin, and America was born through slavery. And actually, the last few hundred years, we have to be really just beating ourselves, doing self-flagellation and even immolation because of what's taken place. And I would say, and the same thing with American history as Israeli history, hey, neither of those things are the way to go about this. Like, neither.
100%. I've been thinking about this so much in the way that, the conversation around the anti-Israel of it all is exactly what you just said. Like, we have to reckon with the truth. We have to reckon with history. We want to see everything warts and all. But that, as you said, like, that doesn't mean we need to stand here beating ourselves and disavowing our countries. And no one in America who is speaking out against Israel is, inviting First Nation tribes to take their homes, and they're going to leave America because America's such a horrible place and they should never live here. It's ridiculous.
Not happening.
Right.
Not happening.
And what's happened has happened. And we just have to, it's the reckoning that's important, but you can't press the rewind button, nor should we be trying to.
This sounds like a cop-out, but the world is just so much more complex than that.
Yeah.
And for me to expect that, like, it's the same way I would teach about the Torah, the Hebrew Bible. If I'm teaching the Torah, I don't teach the Torah by going through the heroes of the Hebrew Bible and then just saying, and here's how David was perfect, and here's how Isaac was perfect, and Abraham, perfect, Sarah, perfect, Rebecca, perfect. And you know why I wouldn't do that? First of all, it's not true.
Right.
But second of all, it's not interesting. That's not interesting, Jonah. It's not interesting to learn about the story of our people by saying, and here, they're perfect, they're perfect, they're perfect. It's not interesting. And number three, I would even argue, it's not, you can't relate to it. So for all of those reasons, I think it's actually dangerous education. And my whole philosophy of education, not just Israel education, Torah education, teaching about the Talmud, is I got this idea a long time ago from this philosopher, this teacher named Menachem Leibtag. And he said this idea that I love. He said that he got his educational philosophy not from like famous people like Vygotsky or Piaget or whomever, but he got it from an Israeli construction site. And what does it say at an Israeli construction site? Sakana kan bonim. Danger, we're building here. Like, that is where good education, that's where construction could take place. In a place of danger, in a place of different perspectives, in a place of tension, that's where building takes place. And that, I would even argue, where so much of our identity takes place. And if I want to cultivate people's identity, then I have to see the broader story and I have to watch the whole thing interact with each other.
Obviously, we as human beings, we have the capacity to struggle with ideas and to, confront difficult paths and bad choices that other people made that are not us. And yet there's sort of this notion, I guess, that we aren't, and that we have to smooth everything over, and that we're not capable of those things, and we shouldn't go near them. I mean, what do you think that's about?
I think that that's a very, very legitimate concern. I was listening to the podcast with you and your mom before, and I loved it. I loved, first of all,
Thank you.
nothing like that. That was
Right.
really amazing. And like conversations about, broader conversations about anti-Semitism and Jewish identity and how we think about this and how we confront it. I think that the Jewish people have been plagued with thousands of years of, I know you don't like the term anti-Semitism, but hatred of Jews, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So there's been, and it's morphed over time in different ways, and it's expressed itself differently. And for people to expect that trauma won't show itself when talking about the place that is there to either end anti-Semitism, according to Herzl, or protect against anti-Semitism, according to Jabotinsky, right? It to not expect teachers to teach about Israel in a way that's just exclusively defensive and supportive. I think it's a big leap. It's to expect that, and that's why we have to show, well, here's why it matters, and here's why ultimately it's going to lead to better conclusions, and
Right.
ultimately the goal is to have a thick identity and care so much about your Jewish identity, broadly speaking. And then that's going to change the way I think if people have this really thick Jewish identity and they really, really own their story, then it's a totally different conversation about Israel. There was the founder of Peshischa Hasidus. He says his name. I actually don't know his name. He was known as the Yehudi, meaning the Yid Hakadosh, the Holy Jew. He said if a person knows who he is. Yeah, it's an awesome name. Like, I would love to be known as the Yid.
Yeah, too late.
He goes, if a person knows who he isn't frightened by anybody. And I think that a lot of people don't know who they are and are therefore frightened by everybody.
I mean, that's sort of the philosophy, and I've spoken about this on the show, that I try to take to the way I talk about everything. Is I feel so much more confident when I do look at all the warts and consider all the sides, because then I'm getting the whole truth, and then I can draw my own conclusion. And I don't know there's a fear there that by looking at that, it's a sign of weakness, or it's going to diminish your position, when in fact, as you just say, it strengthens that position. It strengthens your identity. Yep. to look at all that stuff and then feel really confident in the conclusions that you are drawing for yourself from the full information. I think that's critical.
But it also has to be done in a context. And the context that I like to think of is what I call goosebumps with complexity. That's something that my friend David Suissa, when he heard me talking once, he's like, "Noam, you're all about goosebumps with complexity." That's how he talks. "Noam, you're about."
I love
goosebumps
David
with complexity."
Suissa.
He's the man. He's the man. So he's like, "Noam, you're all about goosebumps with complexity." So what? If you know David, so he's he's the editor-in-chief of Jewish Journal, and the whole idea is like, yeah, if it's just complexity, if it's just like, well, I don't know, and there are warts, then we're not being fair to the uniqueness of the creation of the Jewish state and what it's trying to accomplish.
Right.
And if you do just Goosebumps, where I feel the stories and I hear the stories of the Ma'alot massacre in the 1970s, and then I see the Munich massacre and those stories, and I go to the 7th of October and I feel like what it was like to root for and fight for Hirsch every single day that he was in captivity. If it's just Goosebumps, then you're also missing the complexity. And I think the healthiest educational experience, media experience, Jonah, you're an educator. Hate to break it to you. You're an educator. So
Yeah.
the most important, like, you probably, like, when you're like, cool and like got the great hair and like a celebrity and everything, you're an educator, my friend. And our job as educators is to do the Goosebumps with complexity. If we leave one and not the other, I really, really get nervous about what this generation's getting from us.
I love that. So I want to talk about your show, Unpacking Israeli History. How do you approach the stories you're going to tell?
Yeah. So it started from like, hey, what are the most important topics in the history of Israel? And
what were they?
What
were episodes 1, 2, and 3?
So I should know this, but Dreyfus Affair was definitely up there. Herzl's dream, I forgot what it was called, but Herzl's whatever stories about Herzl.
Right.
I believe that the Altalena is one of the most important moments in Israeli history.
I don't even know what that is.
I love that. I love that.
Never heard that word in my life.
It was a month after the state of Israel was created. And you could go there right now, right outside the hotels in Tel Aviv. There was a beach right near and the Tel Aviv beach, and there was sort of like this pause in fighting. People forget that the Arab-Israeli War was actually two different wars. The end of November 1947 until May of 1948 was basically a civil war between the local Arabs and the Jews. And then when Israel declared itself to be a state in the middle of May 14th, 1948, then it became an all-out, all-front war against the Arab countries surrounding it. And a month after that, there was a moment in which, Israel, to be a state, to be a country, you have to have one army. You have to have one Declaration of Independence. You have to have one government. The Palestinians, as we know, have two governments, Hamas and the PA. They have two constitutions in the Gaza and in the West Bank. They have two militaries in West Bank and Gaza. And what happened was a month after May 1948, Menachem Begin was on this ship called the Altalena, which is Italian for seesaw, which is the nom de jour. I might have said that totally wrong, but it sounded cool. Of his teacher Jabotinsky. So basically, this ship was coming up with different ammunitions to help with the war against the Arabs. But the problem was there had to be one army. And there were three different militias at the time. There was the Irgun, there was Lehi, and there was the Haganah. And David Ben-Gurion said, enough having multiple armies is enough. And David Ben-Gurion then told Yitzhak Rabin, I get really animated about this, to basically take on the ship, take on the Irgun, the Altalena ship. And they ended up killing, I think, 16 Irgun members in their own people. And Menachem Begin famously at that moment said, Milchemet achim me'olam lo. There should never be a civil war amongst Jews. Lay your arms down. Do not shoot back. And that moment, both David Ben-Gurion's decision to fire on the Altalena and Menachem Begin's decision to retreat and to say, it's one army, that changed. If that moment didn't happen, there would be no Israel. There would be multiple militaries. And you had to have that, I think, the humility, the submission of Begin, and you had to have that kind of that strength of presence of Ben-Gurion to say, this is the way it's going to be. And so these moments really matter to understanding the story of Israel.
So you mentioned Unpacked, beyond just Unpacking Israeli History. You've got the core OpenDor media brand is Unpacked. You guys make fantastic videos. I've watched a lot of them. I've seen them in more academic settings. I've watched them just for myself. I'm Googling something and those are great videos. You're also behind Unpacked for Educators. Yeah. So how is that different than just sort of the basics of Unpacked?
Jonah, you really did your homework. I love normally I'm hosting podcasts.
Sure.
And my wife said to me, she goes to me, what's the difference between being a host and being a guest on a podcast? How would you answer that?
Being a guest, you don't have to do any work. You just get to show up and have a good time. And being a host, you got to do all the work. I don't know. That's the difference for me.
Okay, fair enough. So Unpack for Educators takes the videos, it takes the podcasts, it takes the different articles that we write, and then it produces lesson plans and curricula so that if you're in a Jewish day school or you're in a Hebrew school. I was thinking I used to be so darn afraid to teach about Israel in my Jewish day school teaching days because I didn't feel like I knew enough. Frankly, I was intimidated by it. And that's not a reason. That's not a good reason. You just need the lesson plans and the curricula and the tools to do it. But if you have the tools, it's doable. So I wanted to make sure, and my team, the educators who work with me, they're awesome. They're educators. They're real educators. So they've been in the Jewish day school system, in the congregational school system, and they create lesson plans and curricula that are just so important. And we should never be able to, no one, as we started the conversation, no one should be able to say, I didn't have the ability to teach about this. I didn't know about this, So that's what that's trying to accomplish, and make sure that if you're teaching, you can teach in a fun way, in a meaningful way. You see the different perspectives on issues. Stop telling young people what to think, but give them the tools for how to think. And that's the whole freaking idea of the whole thing. And then we launched something for non-Jewish schools also. So
what's that called?
Connect Ed. That's a different division.
Tell me about Connect Ed.
So that's working with independent schools. Again, thinking about the market and then the product. Public schools can use it also. But it's for them, it's different videos, different lesson plans, different curricula. And we have like we have advisory board members who guide us, who are like, I don't know if you know him, Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib.
Oh, of course.
He's amazing thinker, controversial, provocative, just the way I like it. He's Mohammed Ajani Doudi, people like Haviv Retagur, and they come together and they help produce videos and lesson plans and curricula and do professional development in these schools, bringing Palestinians and Israelis, bringing people who are experts in courageous conversations and difficult conversations and media literacy, and going to the top schools, in the country, in LA, in New York, and Miami, and all over, and try to build, and to say it's not about connect, that the goal there is not for people to connect to Israel, but to actually know the story of Israel, and to be able to be thoughtful and be able to have difficult conversations across political and religious differences. Like, please, world, please, United States of America, we could do this. We could do better.
We talk about that on this show all the time.
Yeah.
What's the impact been of these programs?
Unpack for Educators, we have, thankfully, we take data really seriously. And again, if I can make a note to all nonprofits, I think data is really important.
Yeah.
So we have, I think as of today, 12,997 people with accounts that utilize it. You have to have an account to utilize the lesson plans and curricula. My favorite stat is when we're asked how we're perceived in terms of our bias when they utilize our content. I think like something, I'm slightly making up these numbers, but it's something like 55% say neither right or left, 20% say leans right slightly, and 15% says leans left slightly. And I'm like,
it means you're doing something right.
It means like we're really trying to we're trying to do it. We're trying to really do it. So that means a lot to me. And also the fact that we work with Orthodox schools and Reform schools and community schools, and like people are interested in. Here's what people are interested in. They want to know the facts. They want to know the different implications of those facts. They want to know how different people see those facts, and they want the tools to guide people in how to have a conversation about all of that.
How do we scale like what you're doing? Like if you had an unlimited budget to bring this education to the masses, like what's missing? What aren't we doing yet?
I think we have to do a few things. First of all, in the Connect Ed space, it's not at scale yet. We're working with 33 schools as of today. So that is scale more than one, right? There was one school in New York City that reached out to me. I could say their name, Horace Mann in New York City, reached out to me after the 7th of October. Their head of school said to me, talk about good lines. Their head of school, a guy named Tom Kelly, had a great line. He goes, Noam, that's what he calls me, Noam, I don't want to put a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches. That's a line. There's a line. And he's like, you got to come into the school, teach people about Israel, teach the faculty, the administration, the students. So we then launched that from 1 to 33 schools.
That's awesome.
But my goal is to be into 1,400 of independent schools in 3 years. That's my real goal. And again, with them focusing on media literacy, recognizing bias, courageous conversations, I really want to develop a certificate. That's something that we want to do, like to graduate high school, knowing how to have difficult conversations across political and religious differences, including the story of Israel, Palestine, not exclusively about it, but including it. Right now, around 75% of, I've memorized this line, around 75% of all English-speaking non-Haredi Jewish schools across the globe utilize our content. There you go. Second line. But I want it to be much deeper. Like I want, like, Jonah, you went to Jewish day school. I went to Jewish day school, right? You went to summer camp, sleepaway camp. I went to sleepaway camp. I want people to be graduating from these schools and from camps with real literacy and graduating and not being able to say, I did not know. So I think that we've done the mass work pretty decently, but it's got to be better. And now the next level is deepening it with like hundreds of schools so that we could say, the vision of graduate is that they have literacy on these topics. The vision of graduate is that they are confident in speaking about these topics. Again, not telling them what to think, but literacy at scale with passion. I think that is something that needs to be done more. So that's what I would do.
Let's talk about Jewish sleepaway camp for a second.
Let's do it.
What role do you think, if any, or responsibility do the camps have in terms of this Israel education?
I do a scholar in residence every summer at this one sleepaway camp called Camp Lavi. And it's actually right next door to Camp Ramah. Is it in the Poconos? Like I go there.
There's one there.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
And I used to go to Camp Ramah in Ojai. I used to go there. Like
that's where I went.
That's where you right. I'm blown away by Camp Ramah, Ojai. Blown away by it. And I would say that what I do at Lavi is something that all sleepaway camps could do, which is there's what's called, I don't know what's called in different camps, but chinuch time, like there's time to like learn something, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that a large percentage of that time should be Zionism and Hebrew literacy education, like Hebrew language and Hebrew literacy, and make it cool, make it interesting. You don't have to do the toughest topics about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but the story of Zionism is really fascinating. And they're just like there's debates within Judaism, there's debates within Zionism. There's the Jabotinsky Zionism, which is different than Herzl Zionism. There's the A.D. Gordon Zionism, which is different than Berdichevsky Zionism. There's a Chad Ha'am Zionism, which is different than Rav Kook Zionism. And like you could explore Zionism. My parents went to a camp called Masad, and they speak about Masad like it is the Garden of Eden. And I went back to I saw their yearbook from 1977. And in their yearbook from sleepaway camp, they had Hebrew language debates on whether or not Israel should negotiate with a PLO. There's Ba'ad and Neged, for and against.
Wow.
And I was like, this is sleepaway camp. It's fun. But you know what's also fun? Meaning, conversations.
Right.
Let me just tell you what I did at Lavi. I did a moral dilemma. If there's a musical artist who is espousing ideas that are antagonistic towards Israel, let's say death to the IDF or things like that, let's say, maybe on the nose of it, right? Should you go to their concert if you love their music or not? And I had a room of Americans and Israelis, 100 plus of them, and they said different sides of the issues. They worked it through in a Shabbat afternoon. It was awesome. It was a real educational conversation, and they heard the different sides. The answer is it's absolutely possible in sleepaway camps. And the digital content could happen before. You could have it, like I did it at Ramah. Don't tell anyone. I did it at Ramah. I showed digital content at Ramah when I was there on a weekday.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And it happened. It's okay.
Yeah. So you have a second podcast that we've briefly touched on here with Michal Biton, Wandering Jews.
Yeah.
What's that show about? How did it come to be? And what's the goal with it?
Thank you for asking about that. Wandering Jews is such a fun podcast because it's me and Michal is a powerhouse scholar, educator. She's fierce, strong.
I got the chance to be with her in New York earlier this spring.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So she's like fierce and strong, and she's wicked smart, and she really is. And so and then you have me, who is like a combination of silly and serious, and the two of us are in conversation about all things Jewish identity. We just recorded live 7 episodes that haven't been released yet, but about Jewish ideas, meaning what is Shabbat? What is Judaism? What are the life cycles in the Jewish experience? All different topics around Judaism as a religion and Judaism as a faith and also Judaism as a people. So we go through all these different topics and we have a genuine, authentic conversation about it where we want people to come away with substance and content and to continue to wonder and think through. The similar idea of unpacking Israeli history, continue to think about these ideas, but with that goosebumps with complexity. And sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't. I also think it's important to say this, like there are great podcasts out there, and I think we have to have more female Jewish podcast hosts. And Michal's just like, besides being female, she's brilliant. And so the two of us come together, a man and a woman, come together, have a conversation about Jewish ideas. That's an interesting model, but we're going to have a whole group, and I won't announce it yet because I don't know when this is being released, but we're going to have a whole group of young folks who are going to be our guests on our show, and speaking to them on their terms. Your guests matter a lot in terms of who you're trying to reach as well. So
of course,
that's how we think about it.
Noam, the teacher's teacher, thank you so much for enlightening us and providing such a key service to the Jewish world and the world at large. And it's been awesome learning with you and from you.
Jonah, you are the man. Let me just say this. Like, there's so many, you were doing so much for the Jewish world and way beyond the Jewish world to really make Judaism something that is meaningful to people and cool to people and interesting to people. You definitely have the best hair of anyone that hosts a Jewish podcast. That is for sure. You owned that market. And I want to say there's so many people who said, Noam, you and Jonah got to do something together. You got to do something together. And I was like, all right, let's see what happens. So I'm so happy that we finally we're connecting. That's
Me
awesome.
too, man. Me too. All right, he's a mensch. It's been 30 minutes. I'm Jonah Platt. Shalom.